Hello. Sometimes when multiplying fractions, we end up with very large numbers in the numerator and denominator, and then we have to simplify at the end. An example of that would be here, 3/10 times 25/6. Now, it may prove to be quicker if we do simplifying as we go, and this is called cancellation. And the easiest way for me to teach you this is to actually show it to you and you work out what the rules are as we go. Here's my first example. 1/3 times 3/4. What I'd like you to do now is stop the video and work that out. Okay, if you've done that, you've probably got a calculation that looks like this. You multiplied your numerators, 1 times 3, and you got therefore a final numerator of 3, and then you got 3 times 4 and your denominators, that gave you a denominator of 12. Then you looked at simplifying at this point, you realized that they were both in the 3 times table and 3 was a factor, and therefore you could divide top and bottom by 3, and therefore you end up with our final answer, simplified answer, 1/4. Now we might be able to speed that up by looking early on for numbers that are repeated in the numerator and denominator of our original calculation. So have a quick look a moment and see what's repeated here on the left. That's right, there's a 3 repeated, and it has to be repeated on the numerator and the denominator to be important, because if it's on the numerator and denominator, then we can cancel it out. Let's have a look at what we mean by that. Okay, what's this fraction actually asking us to do here? Well, it's actually saying take my 1, multiply it by 3, and then because it's here in the numerator, so denominator there, then says and then divide it by 3. Well, what's 1 times 3 is 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. I could do that if I had a 5 up in this top corner. I would have had 5 times 3 divided by 3. Well, 5 times 3 is 15. Divided by 3 brings you back to 5. So what's the effect overall? Well, this multiplied by 3 is cancelling out with that divide by 3. Yeah. So quite frankly, there's no point in doing that step. So what I can do is I can cancel them out. And you can probably see now that what I've actually got written there is 1/4. Just to say that we haven't made those two numbers 0, in practice what we've done is put a 1 in place of them. So I've got 1 times 1 on the numerator now, and I've got 1 times 4 on the denominator. So that takes me straight to 1/4. Here's a bit of a tidier version, so you might want to write that down. There we go. And this is called cancelling or cancellation. Let's have a look at a slightly more complicated version. 1/3 times 6/5. We know how to do that the normal way. Let's have a look at these fractions we've got here. Well, there's nothing really in common between the 1 and the 5, but there is something in common between the 3 and the 2. That 3 is one lot of 3, isn't it? And this 6, so it is 2 lots of 3. Well, there's no point in multiplying the top by 3 and then dividing again by 3, so I could just cancel those out. And what am I left with? Well, on the top I'm left with 1 times 2, and on the bottom I'm left with 1 times 5, and that takes me directly to my answer, which is 2/5, because each of those, a number in the numerator and the denominator, were both in the 3 times table. Here's an example. That's that example written out more neatly. You might want to copy it down. Okay, let's take on a slightly more complicated version again. 2/5 times 5/4. Well, let's have a look and see if we've got numbers in the numerator and denominator that have got anything in common. I think you can see that we've got a 5 in the denominator there and a 5 in the numerator there. So that's the same as multiplying by 5, dividing by 5. So I can just cancel them out. Yeah, think of that. I've replaced it with a 1. Now let's have a look in the other diagonal here. Well, what have I got? I've got a 2 and a 4. What have they got in common? They're both in the 2 times table. So I've got one lot of 2 here. I've got 2 lots of 2 there. Well, there's no point in multiplying by 2 there and dividing by 2 there. So I can cancel them out. What am I left with? The denominator, I've now got 1 times 1. In the numerator, I've now got 1 times 2, left with 1 times 2, which gives me my half directly. So there it is, a bit more neatly written out for you to copy down. Okay, next one and final example, my really nasty one here. So what have I got? 3/10 times 25/6. So let's have a look. What have we got in common down here at the bottom? Well, I've got a 3 and a 6 that have got something in common. They're both in the 3 times table. So I've got one lot of 3 here and I've got 2 lots of 3 here. So there's no point in multiplying by 3 and then, so I'm multiplying by 3 on the top left, then dividing by at the bottom right. I've got 2 times 3, so I can cancel those out. Let's have a look at the other diagonal. And there's something in common between the 10 and the 25. Well, they're both in the 5 times table. So this one is 2 lots of 5 is 10. And up here I've got 5 lots of 5 is 25. So again, what's happening? It looks like I'm multiplying by 5 at the top here, and then I'm dividing by 5 because it's on the denominator there. So there's no point. If it's top and bottom like that, I can just cancel it out. So what am I left with to multiply out? Well, I've actually just got a 1 times 5 on the top in my numerator, and I've got a 2 times 2 left in the bottom of my denominator, and therefore my final answer is 5 times 4. So there it is, written out slightly more tidily for you to copy down. And now here's my summary for you to get down at the end of the vid. So cancelling fractions is a way of speeding up the multiplication of fractions by effectively simplifying as we go. The simple version of this, the simplest version, is where I have a repeated number in the numerator and denominator. So here I've got 11 in a numerator here and 11 in a denominator there. So there's no point multiplying by 11, dividing by 11. I can just cancel those out. That's the simplest one, isn't it? So I just get 3/5. And that should be a 3 there, sorry. There we go, 3/5. In the second and more complex example, I have to go for looking for numbers that are in the same tables. So here I could see that the 3 and the 6 are in the same tables, so I can cancel that out, times tables. And the 10 and 25 are in the same times table, so again I can do the cancelling. And as I go, effectively I cancel out my 3 and my 5 as I'm going along, and therefore end up with my final answer. So there you are, useful method to use in your Hegarty activity or task that you're about to do.